Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are still in Connecticut and we're going to stick to that state and have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys are quite a well-established brewery actually. They seem to have been around for a good few years and they have a very good pedigree behind them as well and have been quite prolific, and that's what we always want to see. We want to see breweries that aren't scared to try different styles. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is one that caught my eye because of one of the hops in it. It's a hop that I really quite enjoy, and it is, of course, a very popular style of beer as well. So, needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Bloomfield, which is to the kind of northwest of Hartford, the largest city in the state of Connecticut, and we're going to have a look then at my first beer from Back East Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Rakautra. It comes in at 7% ABV, and this one is a New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, the main reason, like I said, that this one caught my eye was because it contains the Rakau hop from New Zealand, and from what I understand, it's a hop that's a little bit susceptible to mildew and things like that, so you don't always get the best yields of it. But yeah, this one caught my eye because I tried Rakau hops for the first time back in New Zealand in about 2015 or so, and I really enjoyed the IPAs down there that I had with this hop in it. So I thought, why not? Let's have a go at this one. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I'll do in the future, hopefully from Back East Brewing Company. Very first time they're appearing on the channel, as I mentioned to you already. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So if you go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the American playlist along with a number of other things, which is getting added to quite regularly at the moment, of course. And you can, of course, check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. And there are some really interesting things up on the channel now, so I do recommend that you have a little look at that. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Back East Brewing Company for the first time. So as I've mentioned to you already, Back East Brewing Company are based in the Bloomfield area to the northwest of Hartford in Connecticut, and the brewery was opened back in 2012 and founded by cousins Tony Karlovitz and Edward Fabriczki. So apparently Edward began home brewing in the 1990s during his time living over in San Diego in Southern California, but he eventually decided to move back east to Connecticut in 2001, and that is of course the idea behind the brewery name. But Tony, on the other hand, developed his appreciation for craft beer during his university days in Vermont, and both had the dream of opening their own craft brewery at some point in the future. So they started home brewing together and developing recipes back in about 2006, and they continued over the next few years. But by trade, Edward is an engineer, while Tony has an extensive background in business and accounting, and so they felt they had the kind of perfect combination of skills to start their own company. So when establishing the company, the cousins received a business grant from the Connecticut government to help get things off the ground, and that helped them a lot apparently. But over the years they've continued to develop the brewery's infrastructure and develop new recipes, and one of the really instrumental people in the early days was apparently Stephen Andrews, who remained with them until 2020. But that year they had a large expansion and they opened a completely revamped large tap room at the brewery, which included a large patio, and this opens to the public still today, Wednesday to Sunday. But as of September 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 240 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I said to you earlier, they do quite a variety of different styles, but this one seems to be one of their kind of mainstay beers, if you like, and we got this one locally down here in Hamden. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Back East Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So like I mentioned to you earlier, this one is a 7% New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. This apparently was originally released as an India Wheat Ale back in 2015, and like I said earlier, it's hopped with Rakautra from New Zealand, and it also has a little bit of an American Citra addition in there as well. So Rakautra hops, they come in about 10-11% alpha acid, and they give you really nice notes of like apricot and a little bit of like, you know, you can usually get a little bit of like papaya and pineapple and stuff like that from them as well. Citra, 14% alpha acid, very, very well known hop these days. Good little bit of grapefruit, nice big juicy mango and peach out of it normally. And in a New England IPA, I find that they tend to give you a little bit of kind of lemon limey character as well. But yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the beer itself. I think they have, you know, tweaked the recipe over the years, and that's why it's no longer called an India Wheat Ale. But I'm quite curious to see whether this one is going to be a wheaty leaning New England IPA. But nice artwork on this one. It does remind me a little bit of some of the Maori patterns that I saw down there in New Zealand. But you can see plain silver top on the can. This is a 1 American pint can, which is 473 millilitres, or in freedom units it's 16 fluid ounces. And you can see down on the bottom of the can there is the Back East Brewing Company symbol. I'm not sure how well the camera's going to zoom in on that. Maybe just had it a little bit close there. But yeah, that's nice. It says on the side here, brewed with Rakautra and Citra hops, this hazy IPA is packed with tropical notes of pineapple, peach and orange, hard to pronounce and even harder to put down. I thought I did an alright job with that, Rakautra. So, there we go. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see how we get on with this one then. Yeah. Just be a little bit careful on the pour so that it doesn't get too foamy as we go for it. But there we are. So you can see that this beer is poured a really nice kind of, yeah, mango, I'd say, yeah. You can see before the head disappears, we should look at that first actually. So you can see there's a nice finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head on this one. Kind of medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid, and you can see they get gradually a little bit more foamy as you go further up the head there. But colour-wise, I think to you guys it's appearing a little bit darker on the camera than it is to my naked eye, but to me this has got a very light sort of pineapple juice colour. I always like comparing New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's really just what they look like. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass with this one, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it does look pretty much as you would expect from the style. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do and adjuncts you put in can, of course, affect that too. But you don't often have to care about that when it comes to New England hazies. Of course, they tend to be quite... yeah, they do tend to... I've never seen a barrel-aged one, just to put it clearly. But yeah, I think that's everything we really need to say about the appearance of this one. The only other thing we could add is that the level of haze in this is pretty much what you would expect for a 7%er. Now in these beers, the level of haze depends on the oak content, the wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use, and that can vary from brewery to brewery, and you know, can vary from brewery to brewery, and even beer to beer, to be honest with you. So yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma of this one then and see how we go on. I don't think we need to say any more about the appearance. Yeah. I mean, that does smell really quite nice. It comes across as a big sort of soft, juicy, smooth New England IPA. Now, as I've said with this style before, for me there are 6 different elements you can think about with the kind of malty and yeasty side of these beers. You can have a little bit more of a kind of farmhousey, yeasty type character, and a raggedy and grainy side of things. Those are a little bit more common in American brewed New Englands for me than they are in the European ones. But then you've also got wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and also a good little bit of you know, it's quite often you can get a little bit of sweetness out of these, although that's common in the heavier ones. But yeah, for me, this beer, there is a good little bit of a wheaty note coming out of this one, and I'm guessing when this started life as an India Wheat Ale, that makes sense, you can smell. But as I said, American wheat tends to be quite smooth, I've found, having drank the American beers more consistently over the last wee while. So yeah, I do get a little bit of kind of wheaty character in this one, but the base of the beer, it's a lovely kind of fresh white bready bread crust. On top of that, you get you get a little bit of woodiness in there and a little bit of cracker, but then there's a lot of fluffy white bread coming out of this beer too. Yeah, I think the cat and the dog are fighting under the table. Well, oh well, that's that. So if you hear strange noises, that'll be what it is. Laura and Josh's cat and dog, they're normally quite calm, but obviously not now. But yeah, for me, yeah, fresh white bready bread crust, a little bit of Jacob's cream cracker, lovely little bit of, as I say, a lovely little bit of, yeah, fluffy white bread in there. Beyond that, you get a little bit of a more, you do get a little bit of a wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose, in fairness, and I'm getting some lovely kind of oaty creaminess out of this beer too. And as I've often said, oaty notes, they can usually be used as a gauge for how fresh your New England IPA is. The more creamy they are, the creamier they are, the fresher the beer is. The drier they are, the older it is. But to me, they smell really quite nice and smooth and fresh in this one. This beer does have a very slight biscuity character to it. Yeah, it does have a really nice kind of slight biscuity character to it. Lovely little bit of Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch, and yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. Yeah, so I think that's everything we need to say about the malt base in this one. There is something in there that makes me wonder if they've used a little bit of acidulated malt, but we'll need to see. Yeah. Just that little bit of sharper, citricy note makes me think there's maybe a wee bit of acidity in there. So yeah, on the malty and yeasty side of things, I think that's everything we need to say. On the hoppy side of things then, which is of course the focus with an IPA, the green component is interesting because it has quite a bit of bright floral aromaticity to it, and as I often said, when it comes to IPAs, you can do three types of hopping. Early edition hopping within the first hour of the wort boil, that usually gives you a lot of bitterness and a deep dank aroma and flavour. Late edition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, little bit of bitterness sometimes, but mainly flavour and aroma, and that gives you a nice bright green component in both flavour and aroma. Dry hopping after the wort boil is complete, that's all flavour and aroma, and again that gives you a kind of bright, gives you a really kind of nice bright green component actually. So that's quite obvious in here. New England IPAs tend to rely on late edition and dry hopping. West Coast IPAs use all three, and early edition hopping tends to dominate aroma and flavour over late and dry edition hopping. Yeah. So for me, the the hoppy side of this beer, there's a little touch of earthiness in there. There's a little bit of herbal character. There's some nice floral aromaticity as well. Quite a bright floral aromaticity too. Yeah, there's a nice kind of bright floral aromaticity in there as well. And yeah, you've got a nice bit of lighter kind of grassy character too, which I think is really quite nice. So yeah, aroma-wise, the green component is quite nice and bright and just really kind of potent actually. I do think that's awesome. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, I would say it's kind of what you would expect from these hops. I am getting quite a little bit of lemony zesty kind of character out of it. And I think you're getting there's quite a bit of peachy character from the Citra as well. So yeah, for me, if I take the aroma in really deeply, there's peach, there's juicy mango, there's a lot of apricot in there, and then yeah, quite a little bit of a lemony zesty note to it as well. That goes together really quite nicely, to be honest with you. Quite sharp, and as I say, when you've got that kind of wheaty bitiness and the lemony zesty notes, I think that goes together really, really quite well. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I like that one. So I do like the aroma of this. As I always say, take a bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we have a taste of this one and see what it's all about. I think there is still a wee bit of stuff left in there, but we'll put that in a wee minute. But yeah, always take a bit of time to enjoy that aroma, but I think it's time for us to get stuck into this one and see what it's all about. So this one is the Rakautra, as I say, well, messed up the pronunciation this time, a 7% New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA, from Back East Brewing in Bloomfield to the northwest of Hartford here in Connecticut. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh, yeah. That's really nice, actually. Very smooth, creamy, and just kind of almost silky New England IPA. It almost makes me wonder if they've used a little bit of rice in the malt base here, because it reminds me of a few of the Japanese brewed IPAs that I've had in the past. Yeah, it's really nice. I mean, this is right up my street. I love New Zealand hops, as I've mentioned on the channel many times before. So many different varieties of these days, but this is really nice. Big thumbs up to Back East Brewing Company for this. This just hits the spot. Yeah, quite a little bit of sediment at the bottom of the can there with this one as well, so you can see it's got even hazier as we've just poured that last little bit, but not that I'm going to complain. Not that I'm going to complain. So let's try it with that little bit more sediment and see what it's like. Oh yeah, even more, just even kind of fluffier and creamier and things. Yeah, really, really nice beer. You can see the difference in that level of haziness in this one actually. So when you put that last little bit in, it is actually, you know, pretty soupy and gloopy, which is kind of interesting. I didn't expect that last little bit to be so thick. I probably should have, you know, poured a little bit, kind of rolled the can a little bit and then put the rest in. But anyway, let's focus on the flavour of this beer then. So for me, just on first impression, it's a very smooth, I think this one is quite wheat leaning, just from the flavours I've had from the other American IPAs that I've been drinking when I've been over here this time. American wheat is very smooth, and you can kind of tell that. The body you're getting in this beer is mainly due to the wheat, I would think. But there is a bit of oat in there too, you can tell that. So, middle third of your palate then. The backbone of the beer is that lovely kind of fresh, white bready, almost hedgehog roll type character. And that, yeah, that goes together really nicely in this one. So yeah, for me, the backbone of the beer, yeah, as you move on that middle third of your palate, fresh white bready bread crust, like I said, as you move further forward, it's a little bit more kind of woody. You do have a nice little bit of a, like a Jacob's cream crackery note coming out of this one. And there's, yeah, a wee bit of woodiness, and then there's a kind of layer of like Jacob's cream cracker. I don't know if you would say graham crackers in America. I've heard that term used by some of my American beer tubing colleagues. But then, yeah, above that, you get this fluffy and quite dense, actually, white bready character. American bread, as I say, tends to be a little bit sweeter than European bread, for sure. And the American palate, generally, I think, is sweeter than a European palate. But yeah, that is really nice. Yeah, for me, the the bready character you get in this one lingers there for a while, and you can feel above the kind of almost fluffier white bready layer, you get a more dense white bready character, and that is the wheat coming out of this beer, definitely. So the wheaty character is quite prominent in this one for sure. And yeah, gives you a lovely kind of silky smoothness there. But on top of the wheaty layer, the more dense wheaty layer, you get this really nice creamy character coming out of the beer. So as you go down that middle line of your tongue, there's a lovely sort of smooth, there is a lovely sort of like more dense, sweet, creamy, oaty character there right down that middle line of your tongue. And as you move out toward the edges of your palate there, it does get that little bit kind of drier actually. In the dead centre of your palate, you've got a wee bit more, you can feel that little circle there, which gives you a wee bit more sweetness. So in that little circle in the middle of your palate, you can feel it's a little bit like a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type flavour. And as you move further out toward the edges of that middle third of your palate, it's a little bit more kind of biscuity, like a McVitie's digestive biscuit. Maybe a little very slight cookie type thing for the American viewers watching this. But yeah, that's the middle third of your palate in this beer for me. I think that covers it. So we'll go to the back third of your palate then. And as I've said, quite often the back third of your palate, the flavours are quite similar. They're just a wee bit more, they just come out at different intensities. So that border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there. There's a wee bit of a more kind of sweet brown bready character, a more dense white bready note in there. And then, yeah, the base of that back third of your palate is definitely more, yeah, the base of that back third of your palate is definitely a more kind of fresh white bready bread crust, just a little bit drier. Then you get a crackery layer, which again, graham cracker just feels a little bit drier. Then you've got the kind of brown bready layer, which feels a little bit more tight. You've got a little bit of a wholemeal brown bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy. Then you've got the fluffy white bready layer in there, which feels lighter and more airy, but it's still, the bready character still has its sweetness there, and you can feel the wheaty character just creeping on top of that and giving you that little bit of bitiness out of the beer, and I think that goes together really well, so it gets a big thumbs up from me in that regard. So yeah, on top of everything else on that back third of the palate, you do get that little bit of yeasty character in there. And for me, the yeasty character in this is really interesting. So you've got this kind of more dense, sweet, white bready kind of character out of this one. It has got a little touch of like a woodiness, so like a dry woodiness to it, and then it feels like it's kind of wrapped in honeycomb, which is quite nice. So definitely, yeah, the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together. And again, that for me is really nice. So yeah, interesting stuff. I have to say that is pretty interesting. But that's the yeasty and malty side of the beer covered. Now I would say, I was talking about this one having a little bit of ricey character to it earlier. The further you go into the aftertaste, you can just feel, like above the oats, you just get this kind of nice, sweet, ricey, oily sort of thing. It really would not surprise me if there was a little bit of rice in this beer. And it reminds me of some of the beers that I had from Dugas Brewery in Gothenburg, actually. They did a few IPAs that had a little bit of rice in it, and the flavour profile of this one, I think, is really similar to that. And it works. I do like beers that are like this. It reminds me of a few of the Japanese IPAs that I've had, because a lot of brewers over there, of course, are sake brewers that try brewing beer, and it makes sense to use a wee bit of rice. So yeah, I like that with this one for sure. So on the hoppy side of things, for me, the green component in this one is kind of as you'd expect. Little tiny bit of earthiness there in the back corners of the palate, not too much, but as you move further forward, you can just feel the beer gets more and more floral, and kind of it has a little touch of dankness to it, not too much, and it gets a wee bit kind of more floral and spicy toward the front of that, at the front corners of your tongue there, which is quite nice. So yeah. So yeah, for me, around the front curve of your tongue, you've got a nice little bit of a lighter, sort of grassy side of things. So a nice kind of oily, grassy character coming out of this beer, and it's the green component, to be honest, is quite oily, and I like that about this beer. It's one of the more oily New Englands that I can say that I've had for sure. But yeah, front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of the beer, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of a kind of bready build up in there. In the base of the beer, you have this nice kind of wholemeal brown bready character, the white bready character sitting on top of that. Then the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more of a kind of has a little bit more of a kind of white bready sort of thing. You've got a white bready bread crust, soft white bread on top of that. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So for me, the fruity side of this beer is quite interesting. I don't really agree with them that there's so much peach in this one, actually. They say that on the can, but if you go to the back of that front third of your palate, I'd say that it's not quite sharp enough to be peach for me. It's more of like a big juicy passion fruit, and then as you move further forward, you get the juicy mango, and those two elements are coming from the citra, of course. But then as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, it's the apricot from the Rakautra, and this one, big juicy pineapple for sure as well. And then as you move further forward toward the front of that, the front of that front third of your palate, it's got a little bit of like a gooseberry, almost lychee sort of thing. And that's citra that can give you that. I think Rakautra can give you a little bit of a lychee type flavour as well, and it's that gooseberry lychee type flavour kind of promotes this sort of almost sweet ricey type character that I'm getting out of this beer too. So that's quite interesting in this one, I have to say. I think that's an interesting point to make about this beer. But yeah, I think this is really nice. I really enjoyed this one. It's been a while actually since I've enjoyed a kind of 6.5–7% New England IPA as much as I've enjoyed this one, because usually the levels of creaminess and stuff that you're getting in this beer, the kind of level of thickness and things, you have to go to the doubles or even the triples to get that in a lot of cases. So I have to compliment Back East Brewing on that. They've pulled off a really nice New England with a lot of body actually. I like the big thick creamy New England IPAs, and this is right up my street. So yeah, on that note, I think we should round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. So now, for me, this beer's pushing the top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth. This beer kind of straddles a line between being quite silky and smooth and creamy, and also having quite an oily character to it as well. It's definitely one of the more oily New Englands that I can think of come across. It's got an impressive level of mouthfeel to it when you consider it's only 7%, as I've said. The IBU in this one feels as if it's quite low actually. I would go as far as saying this one could be as low as 20 IBUs. It feels as if it's almost like, German Helles level bitterness, or even Hefeweizen level bitterness, which is 15–20 IBUs. It doesn't feel as if it's the kind of standard 30 IBU that you normally get for the style, although in fairness you do get a wee bit more floral character out of it into the aftertaste. So I might be wrong on that. Always take my IBU counts with a pinch of salt. The body in this one then, the milk malty body, so a bit of dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a little bit of sweetness on top. Then you've got a lovely big juicy creamy fruity character coming out of this one as well, and it's very soft. It's really tropical leaning. It's a lovely beer, this one, and as I said, I've not enjoyed a kind of single New England IPA as much as this one for a good while actually, and I've been drinking very good quality ones in Sweden and Denmark and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely worth checking this one out if you get the chance. And I just picked this one, as I say, because I love the Rakau hop, and it's turned out quite nicely. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been a really nice experience and very good, very positive first taste of Back East Brewing's beers. So, pardon me, yeah, this one was the Rakautra, 7% New England Hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA, from Back East Brewing in Bloomfield, just to the northwest of Hartford, here in Connecticut. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Back East Brewing as well, and we'll see if we can return to these guys again at some point in the future. But for me, visiting Connecticut for the first time in a few years, I just want to cover as many different breweries as I can. But yeah, definitely look forward to trying more of the beers from these guys at some point in the future. We need to have a look at a couple of different styles as well. So check out my social media, check out their social media. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.